What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the LivBtr Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Ciano, CEO of Sabre Advisors. On today's episode, we have Dr. Amanda Hanson, also known as the Midlife Muse. She's a psychologist revolutionizing the way women embrace aging as transformative journey. Dr. Amanda combines traditional psychology with holistic methods, empowering women to heal. We have a wonderful conversation that I know you'll enjoy. Enjoy the episode.
I just wanna have peace. Pay for the bill, let them take my card, never see the receipt. Good health, we proud, but everybody around prosperity.
What's up, guys, and welcome to the LivBtr Podcast. This is your host, Jay Ciano, and this is the show for people trying to optimize every area of their life. Let's go.
I just wanna have peace.
Okay, so Dr. Amanda Hanson, welcome to the LivBtr Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Jay. I'm happy to be here and look forward to where this is going to take us.
Yeah, so we started off camera talking a little bit about your perspective on aging, and I think we share a lot in common, and I'm thinking a lot about, as I approach 50, I'm starting to really just embrace how I feel every day, and I feel so fortunate. And I kind of want to, obviously I want to go back and learn about you, but I want to kind of piggyback onto what we were talking about to get started. So what is your take on aging?
As a woman, I haven't seen anything. As I was approaching 40, I'm going to be 52 in a couple of weeks, but as I was approaching 40 and I was hearing women around me, similar age, start to panic and feel some fear around what was coming, as if the best was behind us, and not just as it relates to how we look, but just even for experiences. I was feeling a very different feeling inside. I thought, gosh, I am so much wiser now than I have ever been before. I'm excited to see who I get to step into, who I get to become. A lot of women around me were also talking about what they were hoping for their daughters and for what they were going to step into. And I remember back when Kamala Harris was voted in as the vice president, and so many women, there was many text threads going on my phone, and women were saying, this is so amazing for our daughters and for all the young women. And I thought, it's amazing for us. When did we stop dreaming? Where was the date that said, as a woman, you've missed your opportunity to expand, to grow, to develop, to build? And so I have this mindset of forever growth and building all the way. I see myself until my, early 100s. I have dreams of who I'll be even then. And so I started to think, when do we stop dreaming as women? I also have that question as it relates to many other things about women, so I wanted to bring the way I felt to the women of the world, because I thought, I can't be the only one who's ravenous for a new narrative around aging as a woman. And so I just started speaking about it a little over 2 years ago on social media, having no idea the response that was organically going to happen.
That's beautiful. It's interesting because it speaks to me quite a bit, because I feel similarly. I truly believe that I can get better every day until my last day, whenever that day is. Yeah. And there's so much, talk about midlife. Yeah. And obviously you think of the word midlife, the next word you think is crisis. And I just don't understand that, because I really, truly, through doing a lot of hard work on myself to better myself and then everybody around me, I find that every year gets better. There's more and more opportunity, and I don't understand how people think otherwise.
Yeah. I think that our way of selling, the way that any company sells to somebody typically is fear-based, especially to women. Like, if we can get them in fear that they need this product, they need this thing. So we are so infiltrated. My daughter's 21 and her friends are already all getting Botox and talking about the fear of aging, right? And it's called baby Botox for preventative aging, as if aging is a failure. Right. Aging is a failure as it relates to women societally. It's not typically. Men become more revered, more distinguished. We become like the, invisible old hag or the cat lady, all the monikers that we have for women. We don't have a silver fox term like we have for a man. We don't have the equivalent for a woman. So I think that there's so much fear coming at us to sell us things. Sure. So we don't see the expansion. But as people, it sounds like you as well, who don't operate from a basis of fear, we operate from a basis of curiosity. So I'm always curious about, who do I get to become? What else is available to me? Oh, that's interesting. I'm feeling contracted around this one thing. Is it possible there's another narrative I can trade out and, live by? So when you decide to trade fear for curiosity, your vision and your lens by which you see the world is very different. It's a very different experience inside of my heart, inside of my mind and body, because I don't move through the world in fear. Particularly as an aging woman, I move through the world with so much curiosity, so much excitement. I still feel at times like I'm 12 years old inside, discovering new things, learning new skill sets, and meeting new people. And it feels like one huge playground. And that's what I want for the women of the world. I want them to get their faces out of the mirror and out into the world and into conversations and spaces and places and love and businesses that they can build.
Sure.
But we got to get them out of the mirror.
No, it's so important. And I think that it's amazing what you're doing. I think it's very necessary. And again, like the term anti-aging is being thrown around so much, where I do believe, obviously it is different for men and women.
Yeah.
And I think that fear-based marketing is so true, right? It's like, it's scaring women into the concept of, you're getting old and you need to do something about it now and prevent the wrinkles or the aging process and things of that nature. But again, why can't you just get better with age?
Well, because women's power historically, because we only had earning rights, women couldn't even have a checking account here in the United States until 1972 without the signature of a man, right? So we're not talking about that long ago.
No.
So we didn't have power in finances. We didn't have power really over our bodies, because if you had too much power and agency, let's say, you would be called other names that you didn't want to be called.
Sure.
So we didn't feel like we had a lot of control, but our beauty and our youth was the one thing that we felt, that's my power. So understandably why women held on to it, because it was their only form of social currency. And so now we haven't yet evolved past realizing there's so much else that's available. But what I see women, the one big mistake I see women making over and over is, we only have a limited amount. Well, not a limited amount, but we have a certain amount of resources. I only have so much energy and hours in a day. So, and for some people have limited finances. How do you want to put those out into the world? And I see women tell me, when it comes to self-development, oh, that wouldn't be possible for me. Or, oh, I wish I could live like you, Amanda. I wish I could be more free. I said, you can.
Right.
You can if you work on these things. Oh, I just don't have the time. I don't have the money. I don't have the energy for that. But they will take it and put it into all their beauty maintenance appointments.
Right.
So when you are spending your limited resources in the world trying to, you're on that train of looking young forever, you certainly aren't going to have the energy or the time to build into business or self-development for yourself. And so I see that it's just women are choosing to believe there's no point in the other thing. Mm-hmm. So for so many of them, they just like, this is my safety. This is what I've always known. This is how I've defined myself. So I'll just stay focused here. And most of them are terribly miserable inside.
I think that goes for most people. I was having that conversation last night. I think people, generally speaking, are unhappy. And, speaking for myself personally, I used to turn to alcohol, and it was just, for me, numbing myself was the easiest way to kind of go through the stresses of being an entrepreneur and being a dad and being a husband and all the things. Right. And I think there's so many people that are doing things to forget their reality because they're not truly happy in reality, which I think is so sad, and I really, for me, when I removed alcohol from my life and I actually sat with my problems and I worked on myself to truly try to be a better human, that's when everything that I was chasing actually just started to happen naturally.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And there's so many ways that you can distract yourself, whether it is endless shopping, binging on Netflix shows, or scrolling on your phone.
I'm guilty of that.
Right? And it's not to say we don't all want to unplug at some point, but I love living my own life so much that I don't have the time or the energy to watch other people live theirs, or most things I don't find terribly entertaining on television. So I don't feel like when you create and architect you romanticize even. Like I romanticize my life so much and the experience of being human so much that I don't want to turn away from it.
Yeah.
I just want to be with it all the time. And so I think when you learn the art of living like that, my life, my husband's always so interested, like, babe, I don't understand how you never want to watch television, because I would rather go and read poetry.
Sure.
I would rather write about my next idea or really like distill down what it is I want to share next, because that to me feels like the richest soil in the whole world.
Well, it's really a creator mindset versus a consumer mindset.
Yes.
Right. And I'm the same way. But I, listen, to each their own. And,
of course.
But for me, sitting and watching television is just not how I want to use my time, my energy, my brain space.
Same.
So a lot of things. I want to learn more about you. I want to understand your family dynamic, your marriage, your motherhood, like all the things.
Yeah.
Before we go into that, though, I do want to understand, like, do you have a routine? What do you do to actually make yourself feel good every day?
Yes. Oh, people ask me, that's one of the main questions I get. What is your skincare routine and what is your soul care routine? Because I started using the word soul care routine about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I would say, quite honestly, I know everybody wants like some $1 million answer. And the truth is, I just pay attention. Mm-hmm. Like I really, really pay attention to, and this is the question I ask myself every day is, Amanda, what do you need today? What does the business need? What do you need? I know what everybody else needs in my family, but I, for many years, wasn't paying attention to what I needed.
Sure.
And then there's this like underlying resentment that builds. So I pay close attention to what I need. The only thing I can say that I consistently do, there's a lot of movement, a lot of dance in my life. I've never been trained as a dancer. It's just very organically, like, intuited in the moments. But one of the things I consistently do is every morning before I turn on my phone, before I interact with the outside world of any form or fashion, I go to the mirror before I even pick up my toothbrush. And I just spend anywhere from 90 seconds, no more than 3 minutes in the mirror with myself. And I've been doing this for a couple of years because I decided, Amanda, if you're going to really chart a new course for yourself as a woman who's going to be in the world as a revolution as she ages, not covering anything, any signs of it whatsoever, what is the most revolutionary way to do this? And I realized it's to commune with myself every morning and remember the truth of what I know, not what the outside world's trying to tell me that I need to be in fear of or I don't want to absorb other women's fear around aging. So for me, it's in the mirror every morning, reminding myself like who I'm doing this for, why I'm doing this.
Are you talking to yourself? What does that look like?
It's more in my head. Okay. It's more the thoughts. First, it usually starts with good morning, beautiful.
Yeah.
And we have another amazing day together. Yeah. And then I'm really intentional and I feel more into my body and commune with not the three-dimensional version of me, but it goes so much deeper. Like I see the whole beingness of myself.
Sure.
To start my day like that, there is nothing in the world. There's no marketing campaign. There's no fear tactic. There's nothing that anyone could say or do that's ever going to take me to a place of believing that may be more true than what I just experienced for those 3 minutes, because what I'm doing is holy.
Yeah.
And so when I set my day that way, it sets me up for leading in the voice and the tone that I want to root into.
You're blocking out the noise. You're really in tune with yourself.
I mean, I don't even know if I block it. Like I can still hear it all coming in as part of like what helps me create the messaging for the world, because I hear the fear and so I create something different for women, but I don't absorb it.
Right.
I'm not immune to it. Or I am immune to it. I'm immune to the BS, but I don't absorb it because I know that that's not the message I believe. It's just not. So,
how old are your children?
I have a son who is 25, a son who's 23, a daughter who's 21, and a son who's 18.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So I have little ones at home.
Yes.
So my morning starts a little chaotic. Typically,
I remember those days.
I'm sure you do. And it's funny because you try to get up earlier and earlier to like have time to yourself. And I just climbed the equivalent of Mount Everest. I just got back like a week ago. Yeah. And it's like we try to fill our calendars with all these things. And I think parenting today in general is just so we overparent on some level. We make things so
100%.
much more difficult than they need to be. So it's like, I love that you're able to really focus on yourself first thing, because I think it's so cliche, but the reality is, like, if your cup's not full, right, you can't really pour into other people's cups. And it's so true.
Right.
And when you're off, like, everything around you's off. How do you eat? What's your diet like? What's your nutrition?
Yeah, that's a great question. I eat very intuitively.
Yeah.
I primarily, it's been probably about 18 years, I have almost no gluten.
Okay.
Very occasionally, when I'm in Europe, I can have gluten. I can't
Sure.
have it here in America for obvious reasons, the processing. I very low dairy.
Yeah.
That's just because my body feels better that way. But other than that, I don't necessarily, I'll have a glass of tequila, or, you know, some tequila on ice, or an occasional glass of champagne. I wouldn't consider myself a drinker, but I socially will engage if it feels right. Everything is very intuitive.
Yeah.
So I'll have chocolate, I have sweets, I'll have ice cream. I have everything and anything.
Yeah.
I don't work out. I just started doing Pilates about 6 weeks ago. My daughter encouraged me. She's like, it's probably a good idea, Mom, to start doing something. So
Well, you're obviously genetically blessed if you're able to not work out and be as fit as you are.
It's the only beautiful thing my father gave me. Yeah.
I'm sure that's not the case. But.
Well, yes,
Okay.
you'd be surprised.
All right. You know better than me.
Yeah, oh yeah, yes, for sure. Lots of trauma, but he did give me a great metabolism, so I'm happy for that.
That's
I
great.
feel blessed, yes. But I do realize, probably for bone density reasons and overall strength, it might be time to start doing a little something.
That's a good idea.
I have a very active life.
Yeah.
I'm very busy. I walk a lot, you know, but my eating, I think, is just, I don't withhold myself from anything. I don't have this punisher mentality. I feel like I treat myself. I celebrate. I enjoy food. I'm Italian. It's a big part of the culture.
Of course.
It's a big part of how I care for and love other people.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes. My wife's 100% Italian.
Oh,
I know all
you
about
know.
it.
It's our love language.
100%. So you mentioned a little bit ago that you were not necessarily focusing on yourself, and then you there was a pivotal moment, it sounds like, that changed.
Yes.
What happened? What was that moment?
Yeah. About 15 years ago, I found myself really resentful towards my husband.
Yeah.
So much of our life was supporting his career and where he was going and what he was doing. And I was part of that equation. But at the time, he was the enemy. I made him wrong for all of his dreams were all being accomplished and then some.
Yeah.
And mine were still like a little bit of a snail's pace, because I was also balancing my own Catholic guilt that I was raised Catholic with not being, well, who's going to be the primary parent for the children? Who's going to be there for all their things? So that means ultimately my career suffered more than his did at the time.
Which is pretty common, right? Yeah.
And I, rather than take any ownership over how I had even non-verbally agreed to that contract, I blamed him. Somebody had to be the bad guy. So I blamed him, and I filed for divorce. And so we were at the final mediation appointment, about to sign the papers, and he, on the car ride there, we were riding together, and he's like, I'm begging you. He's like, anything. What can I do? I will, anything you want me to do. Let's I'll somebody may see this and be like, well, I didn't. He was like, I will quit. I'll leave corporate America. What do you want me to do? I said, I'm not asking you to do that because you'll ultimately resent me, but we've got to find a better balance. And then within a couple of weeks after that, it dawned on me, just take responsibility for your dreams, what you want. Start doing this differently. And so I really got out of this. What I teach now is this princess energy, this victim energy, that it's everybody else's fault. Yeah. My dad leaving, my husband going after his career. The timing wasn't right. I didn't have family that lived nearby. It's like it was everybody else's fault. And so I decided to step into this energy of like, okay, what would a queen do? A woman who's really in charge of her life. How would this look through her lens? And then I just started one small decision, 1% at a time, taking accountability and action for my life. And then watching what got to come from that place and that space, which also made me much more enjoyable to be around. And I think allowed our marriage to do a lot of healing and be where it is now.
I mean, I have to commend him for, really like going to extremes to try to keep the family together too. Yeah. That's not easy to do either. I feel like at a certain point you're just like almost go with it, so to speak. Oh, well, if she's not happy enough to, want to be here, so on. So I commend both of you. Yeah. Not easy to do. Marriage is very, very challenging. And a lot of things you just said.
Challenging.
land on me quite a bit because there is that dynamic for sure where I've, really pushed my career and I'm always very supportive of my wife and encourage her to do whatever she wants to do. And, we're at a different place now where we can afford to do that and then also, have some help and things of that nature.
Makes such a difference because we were never meant to do this alone.
Yeah.
It's the first time in generations where we are trying to be super parents and have careers and have no family support.
Yeah, exactly.
Do it all. Do the cooking, do the laundry, do that, all the activities for the kids.
My wife and I both lost our moms too. So, and her dad lives in Florida and my dad did live in Florida. I lost him in December. So, we never really had support. The kids never really had active grandparents in their lives, which has been a challenge for sure.
Oh, yes.
Did your kids, how were they through the process? Were they aware of how far it got? I mean, I'm assuming you were at the end practically.
Yeah, he'd moved out. We sat down and talked to them and they would go with him looking for a house that he was going to move into. And they now understand it, so much differently. My son at the time, I think he was about 9 or 10, got up when we were telling them, one of my sons, he got up and ran to his room and I went after him and he said, "Mom, you always tell me when something's hard, try harder. Keep trying, don't give up." And you're giving up. And it was that moment of oh. And I said to him at the time, "Sweetheart, there are adult problems that are very complicated and hard to explain. And someday maybe you'll understand. But Mommy and Daddy have been trying for a long time. We've been trying for a very long time. And so we're still going to be friends, but we have just decided we've walked each other as far as we can walk each other." So, and I think my husband's pleading to do anything to make it work is I think he fundamentally realized, and I say this with no ego, but I think he fundamentally realized I am pretty much a one of a kind. I'm a very rare, very unique woman. And I think he knew ultimately, if he were to be honest with himself, and he was, if he looked at the whole trajectory of our life, I'd done so much to support his success that I think he understood the validity, because he also knew the brain power and the dreaming and everything that was inside of this woman. And he saw so much of that having to be stifled, or we chose for it to be stifled because we wanted a primary parent to be in the home with the kids. And I think that there was this feeling of because I said to him, "How would you feel if this was you? How would you feel if you were watching me fully realize my dreams and you were sitting on the back burner? At some point, you have to understand I'm human. I want more than just being a mom." Yeah. And I felt guilty for feeling like I wanted more, that I wasn't supposed to, a good mother wasn't supposed to want more. And everybody looked at my life and we had such an incredible life. We had the patriarchal checklist, everything you could dream of and then some. And this man who adored me, but I'm not the typical woman. It wasn't enough for me. I was ravenous for more. And so I'm I remember him saying to me at one point, he's like, "I don't know if you'll ever be happy. You want so much." And I said, "Right, but understand one thing. The woman who wants so much is also the woman who's moved 9 times for your career. Is also the woman who's moved into houses while you were in China on business trips. And when you came home, every box was unpacked and put away. This is also the woman who found a social life for our family every time we moved. Didn't ask you once to help me figure out or coordinate schools or any of the kids' activities. So you can't pick and choose where you want that too much woman to show up. She's in everything, everywhere." Yeah. And so I think that too helped him realize oh my gosh, I can't just decide when I want the too much woman to show up. She's everywhere. And so either I'm going to embrace her everywhere or I'm not. And so he decided oh yeah. And now he's really had to step into embracing it because I'm very bold in the way that I show up. And he gets to figure out what that means for him.
Is it challenging for him at any time? Communication is obviously so important, right? Not easy, but when you resent somebody or something is bothering you, it's impossible for the other person to really even know unless you're vocal about it, which I'm guilty of. I try to communicate well in my marriage, but it's not always easy, and I need to get better at it. And so does my wife. It's a two-way street.
Absolutely.
For sure.
We all can improve in that area. Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely think, I think it's a journey and a process, right?
Of course.
And I have been always very clear that I am in rapid evolution forever until my final breath.
Yeah.
And so either that sounds fun for you or it doesn't. And that doesn't make anybody wrong.
Right.
It's just a style. And I've doubled down and stepped into it even more in the past 2 years, and there's no signs of it ever getting to this plateau. So for him, the choice right now is, yes, I choose to still be here. I don't know what next year looks like. I don't hold anybody in any, you need to promise or guarantee me anything, just as I can't. We are showing up every day in full decision. This is where we want to be until something feels different. And maybe it never does. And that's the reality of which I even speak to my children, because I don't want some delusional belief that because we took a vow, that then means we're going to have to sacrifice and be miserable to the end.
Sure.
I don't want that for him. I love him too much.
Right.
And I think he loves me too much. And we've said very openly, if at some point we feel like this has taken each other as far as we can, we will lovingly part ways.
Do you consider yourself a spiritual person?
Yes, very much.
I could tell. I was just curious.
Yes.
And what would be your definition of success?
In terms of
Life.
life?
Yeah.
The definition of success for me would be that everything that I really felt in here, in no conversation, in no interaction, even in my quietest of hours, that I suppressed or denied that truth. Because the only way I'm really going to call in my people, my ideal clients, my ideal partnerships of any sort, is when I walk with the truest authenticity that's in here outside. So for me, it is always like, how much more real can you be, Amanda, in every space and every place? So to me, I think the idea of success is zero performance. Like in every space and place, just showing up fully as you are. It's such a beautiful way to live. It's just, I feel high on life because I'm not performing for anybody or anything. It's either this is me, it works for you, or it doesn't. And it's not like because I'm better or because I need everybody to like me. It just comes from a place of wanting true connections with people that we will energetically match or we won't.
Yeah, and I think as we do get older, we have less tolerance for people that are not necessarily in our frequency.
Yes.
You know, like there's just not enough time.
No.
So I think so many people care so much about other people's opinions where it cripples them. It's really amazing to me because, you know, you're not necessarily supposed to be liked by everybody. You're just be yourself.
I get death threats from men.
No.
Yes, I do. Telling me and calling me really horrifying names. And it is, I will say, overall, with the amount of messages and DMs or people commenting, I have a really highly engaged audience. 98% women. But I do have, like right now, there's a reel that's gone viral multiple times. When I have a viral reel, there are certain groups of men that put it out into their communities and they all come for me. And they typically have no profile picture. They are typically of the sort that say very graphic things they would do to me because we don't like a woman that's this free and this loud and maybe possibly suggesting that other women get to be this way as well. So we are going to first, we're going to like nudge her to like maybe not talk like that so much. We'll say a few things like, oh, but isn't being married so much better than like being alone with some cats? It starts like that, right? And then when you don't go away, then they start shaming you. Well, I'm sure you're all dry and crusted up anyways. Nobody would want you. Oh, okay. And then when you still don't go away, then they come for you with threats. Has
that ever reared its head in like person, or is it just like an online
The closest thing has been a photo of my home recently. Yeah.
No way.
Yes, with people saying, we've mapped every room. We know exactly the layout of this house. Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
So there is a cost to being a really free agent as a woman.
Sure.
To say and to put my physical safety at threat, but I'm not going away. I will never. As a matter of fact, it makes me want to get louder because this is actually what small-minded people do. They come in groups and they terrify you to go away and hide. And I refuse to do it. Yeah. So, there's a lot at stake, right? There's a lot at stake. And you would never think by celebrating women aging and aging beautifully and naturally and powerfully that there'd be so much hate around it.
It's all like positive energy. It's That's crazy.
Can you imagine a man getting death threats for speaking this message?
That's crazy.
Yeah. And I wanted to share that because that is a reality that I deal with.
Yeah.
You know, every other.
You did. That's like.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that we can't just always sugarcoat the message. I understand why a lot of women play to the patriarchal message, right? Like, come in my world, I'll teach you how to lose your 15 pounds of menopause belly fat. Or my program will teach you how to look 45 when you're actually 65. And I understand the safety that lives when you still play to that patriarchal story. Because when you step out of line and say something different, you're going to piss some people off.
It's interesting because up until this conversation, I didn't realize really, what your perspective is and how you would get heat for that. I understand now. It makes complete sense, but not to the extent that you're dealing with it. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So what are you working on now? What has you the most excited? How are you making an impact?
Yes. Well, I have clients all over the world, and I hear from women all over the world regularly about how this message is changing their lives. And women who are in really reserved and cultures, let's just say, where women don't have a voice, are feeling really lifted by this message. I have a live event in November that is going to be in Phoenix, Arizona for 500 women.
Place.
Oh, really?
I went to college there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for 500 women, it's a live event because while I love serving online, I love being in a room with women. And I've been running large retreats for a couple of years, and working obviously one-on-one with women. But for me, having that energy transference where I'm going to be on stage demonstrating my entire philosophy for womanhood. They're going to get to see me in action as to how I live my life. I'm taking them through many different rituals for their lives. That's what I'm most excited about. And then to turn that into a global, like an international tour.
That's great.
And my book will be out in March. So also for the women who will never be able to get into those rooms, my philosophy in a book, so that women can access that.
Can we share the title or not?
Yes, it's going to be available March 3rd. It's called Muse.
Amazing.
And the subtitle of it is The Magnetism of Women Who Stop Abandoning Themselves.
I love that. How long have you been working on it?
It took me 14 months.
Okay.
From writing the outline to completion.
That's where I am now.
Okay.
And I know it's going to be a long process.
It is.
But an exciting one.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah. I think that, again, I want to commend you for what you're doing because it's not easy to show up, especially when people are pushing back, and just to keep going. But when I feel like you're very purpose-driven, obviously. Deeply. And, you know that even if it helps one person, it needs to be said. It needs to be done. Yeah. And I commend you for that. It's not easy.
I think the trade-off is when I'm walking the streets of New York City, so many women come up to me and recognize me and thank me for this work. And what I think every time still kind of throws me is the energy by which young girls come up to me with tears in their eyes, thanking me. They're like, we don't have any role models right now speaking the way you're speaking. Thank you for your work.
So that's actually a great question. So is there a specific demographic that is the majority of your community, or is it all over the place? Age range?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. I mean, the primary chunk is between 25 and 55, with the biggest being between 35 and 50. Okay. But I did not expect, my daughter's 21 and she says to me on the regular, I am so lucky that you are my mom. I have the living embodiment of how to be a woman. I just look at you and the way you speak to yourself, the way you treat yourself, the way you speak to all of us. I get to have the honor of living beside this all the time.
That's the best feedback any mother could ever possibly ask for, and more.
Beyond. Yeah. Just beyond. But then I didn't realize how it was going to transfer, whether I'm in Croatia or London or Dubai, no matter where I am, that women come up to me and say, oh my gosh, thank you for this message. my own mother's terrified of aging. I don't have a role model for how to do this differently. And it's not even just as it relates to aging. I talk a lot about sensuality. I talk a lot about the taboo topics that women are supposed to keep in, behind closed doors. And I bring them into this beauty and art of living. So I think that's what they're also really thankful for, is helping them step into all these levels for themselves, never for anyone else.
Sure.
And speaking so openly and freely about it.
So the young girls, what are the youngest that people will, approach you and thank you?
Early 20s.
Early 20s.
Yes.
And they say they have no role models that really are talking about this stuff to them.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense because
I couldn't find one. When I was 40, I went searching. The closest I came was Georgia O'Keeffe, the painter.
Yeah.
And she's since, she's passed away. But I really studied her work and I've studied her philosophy, and anything that she wrote, I got my hands on. And she's the closest I've come to. I was looking for a muse. I was looking for someone to be inspired by. And she's the closest I came. And so I thought, well, gosh, if I can't find her, why don't I just become her? And be that thing? Because we all know, like, every great invention was invented by somebody who's like, oh, you know what we really need? We don't have. Let's invent that. You know what? One of the next inventions I think we need to have, if somebody can invent a better podcast stand holder. Rather than all those sandbags. I'm like, there's got to be.
Right?
How did somebody not invent something better here?
So true.
But I think every great invention stems from this like desire or lack of something that already exists. And so that's why I just decided, well, I can't find the muse. I'll just become the muse for myself first.
There's a gap in time between your marriage is coming close to end. And you decide that you're going to take your power back and you're going to start doing the things, right?
Yes.
You're giving yourself permission to do all the things that you were being held back for, or holding yourself back for, whatever it was.
Story I was telling myself.
Exactly, right? Because who knows if you would have went to your husband and said, this is what I want to do. Who knows if he would have said, nope, you can't do that, or go for it.
Right.
I would love for you to do that.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like, where did you start? Like, you're here now, but like, I want to hear the story, the gap between like that day to how you got here.
Yes. Well, I should say there was never a full gap, right? Like, I was still working. It was just not in the capacity. I was in LA in private practice when we made one of our big first moves, and then I ended up pregnant soon after that. And
So when you were like close to getting divorced, where were you guys at the time?
Yes. Living.
Were you in LA?
We were living in Connecticut.
Connecticut, okay.
Yes, we were living in Connecticut. And there felt like a limitation on what I was going to be able to actually do in the world, because he was traveling the world Monday through Friday. And while I could work, somebody needed to be home for dinner and like some sense of parenting for these kids. Because he kept saying, I'll support you. Go do whatever you want. And I thought,
but he wasn't, or he was traveling, like he was not around.
No. Yeah. So the guilt, it was overwhelming. I'm like, so they're just going to be raised by strangers?
Exactly. Yeah, that's it.
That didn't feel good.
But I think that's a key distinction, though, because, when somebody's not home for, periods of time, that's a specific dynamic in the household where, I travel a fair amount, but I will not go more than 2 nights. Like I have these rules for myself, but I own my own company. I can kind of do it.
Right.
And again, at this stage of my life, I could do, I could schedule things that way.
Right.
And I have these non-negotiables. But when somebody's truly like not home, it really, everything falls on the other person, which is a very,
overwhelming.
Oh, it has to be.
Very overwhelming.
It has to be.
Yeah. Very overwhelming, very exhausting, right? And so from there, it was just, I said, I'm opening like a studio. I want to start having groups of women come together. I want to start having workshops. I want to start doing community stuff for women again, and take it from just this like one-on-one situation.
So what's like the first thing you did?
I rented a studio space, like 1,200 square feet, and I transformed it. It was like almost like a warehouse. Okay. I transformed it into this insanely luxurious, experiential sanctuary from the moment you walked in the door. And I would host events there for women.
How'd you advertise it?
Oh, word of mouth. Yeah. I don't know. Good old fashioned. Like, I was telling all my clients as well.
Sure.
And they would be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to bring my girlfriends out. We're going to sign up for this workshop. We're going to come for that one. So that was really just how I started.
And I ask these questions because I think people are listening to this that have these, aspirations and desires, but kind of don't really know how to get started. It's easier now, I mean, with Instagram and all these other platforms for sure. Yeah. But you just have to do it.
That's right.
Don't worry about how many people are going to show up.
Right.
Just do it.
You just have to do it. And then, I would say 4 years ago or so, I started Facebook, and then I got on Instagram, and Instagram was hit or miss. I wasn't really even sure what I was doing exactly, other than sharing my passion, my message of the work I'd always been doing with women, but didn't really have a formulaic way of doing it like I have these last 2 years. And in those beginning stages of being more vocal in that online presence, my husband was working for a corporation, a Fortune 500, and the board had asked him to tell me to shut my Instagram down.
Wow.
Right. So I share all this to say, as a woman, there are going to be other hurdles that men will not come up against. And I share that to first normalize that for anyone who's listening, that if we are really talking about turning over patriarchal structures that have kept women quiet and silent forever, this is what it looks like in real time. I had a Fortune 500 company asking me, not really asking me, telling me, and he said to them, I don't own my wife's voice. My wife can do with her voice what she chooses.
Yeah.
And so if I didn't have that kind of person as a partner, you can see how that would have gone very differently.
Sure.
Right? Because we're talking about a primarily white male board who thought, well, we'll just tell that wife over there to shut that down, and she'll do what she's told, and business as usual. Yeah. And when I said, no, he told them, I won't do that. I think we're not used to women being supported in that kind of a way. And so there are these, we want to talk about patriarchy as if it exists as some, thing that it's not tangible and nobody really understands what it is. And that's why I talk so openly, and I give these examples, and I share this stuff with my clients as they're building businesses, because this is the reality. If you get that visible and you get that opinionated and that loud, people are going to come for you. Yeah. So every other woman I meet wants to be a coach for women. That's great. That's amazing. But know that your level of visibility, the more visible you get, the more you're going to have to deal with. Yeah. This does not come for free.
Yeah. No, I have friends in corporate America, men, that have been asked to take down their pages too, just because they have too much. They're building their own brand, and they're supposed to be that brand.
It's the conflict of interest.
They're not supposed to be their own brand. And very big, successful commercial real estate people that work for the biggest commercial real estate companies in the world and have been forced out for not actually agreeing and taking down their stuff.
But that's patriarchy, right? Controlling the individualism.
It's
right.
I could never exist in that space. It's just crazy.
It's really fascinating. It is a whole nother world.
It is. And a story for another time. It could be a whole podcast of its own. So what else? What am I missing before we wrap it up? What else is going on? You have a big event coming up. How can people learn about the event?
Yeah, that's November 2nd and 3rd at the Phoenix Convention Center. There are tickets.
Perfect weather, November in Phoenix.
Oh yeah, it's going to be VIP tickets are sold out, but general admission are still selling. Thank you. Awesome. Of course, that would be available. You can find it on Instagram, my website, amandahanson.com.
Can we order the book yet?
No, not yet. Not till November.
Okay. Mm-hmm. That's great. Mm-hmm. Well, I'd love to read the book.
Oh, great. You'll learn a lot.
I believe I will. Do you now, actually, for my own curiosity, at the stage of the process that I'm at, how much of your own personal experience is, your life story, so to speak, is actually in the book? Yeah.
So it's not an autobiography, obviously, but all of this has been crafted through my own experiences, things that I have done and noticed a huge difference in the way I live and feel as in comparison as it relates to my peers and what I see women struggling with or going through. And so I talk, and it's how I live, how I teach my clients to live. So it's really, the book is my philosophy, my philosophy for living. So there are tons of client anecdotes, coupled with my own life experience. And I give quite a few detailed situations, whether it was through parenting, through marriage, through own personal things, the relationship as it relates to my father. I share a lot of those to show here's what happened. Here's what I could have done or maybe did do for a long period of time. And here's what actually created the change that opened different doors for me. Right. That had I stayed here, I can tell you where this would have gone. Yeah. You know? And so it's really showcasing like what the average person would do with this situation and the philosophy of Dr. Amanda Hanson, or the Muse, the Midlife Muse, what she is suggesting. And so I give anecdotes, but I also share really tangible ways to make these things happen without having to spend $1, because it's all in here. It's all inside.
I love that. I think anybody can apply these principles to truly live better.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's what we're here to do.
That's what we're here to do.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanna have peace. Pay for the bill, let them take my card, never see the receipt. Good health, we proud, but everybody around prosperity. I just wanna have peace.